morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of our webinar series this month as we tackle nutrition and the impact of metabolic health. So I'm especially excited to announce that this month we have not one, but two professionals speaking to us on this topic, Brother Tony Holt and Brother Dr. Kevin Billups. Thank you for joining us. So, Brother Dr. Billups, I know you're the doctor in the room, but protocol dictates that I start with Brother Holt. So, introducing him. So, Brother Holt is a co-founder of the movement called the 90-Day Men's Health Challenge, and this movement actually aims to end the poverty cycle in mindset, health, and wealth. In our health being, with our health being the first order of wealth. Over the past 10 years, Tony has been a speaker, coach, and advisor and facilitator for individuals nationwide, helping to improve or restore their health and vitality through transformative thinking, a science-based approach to nutrient-rich plant-based eating, movement, and sleep. Tony has developed countless hours to research in peer-reviewed studies and literature on the impact of proper whole food plant-based nutrition, mindset, and movement, all of which have helped to make an improvement on the restoration of our health from chronic medical diseases such as diabetes, obesity, hypertension, heart disease. And his passions actually stem from his own personal struggles. At 45 years old, Tony was overweight at the time and grappling with a whole host of health issues. And he actually successfully reversed all these chronic conditions he was dealing with by following a scientifically backed restorative practices that he now shares with men and women throughout the United States and abroad. Tony is the Chief Business Development Officer for Cushion Employer Services Corporation. He's a graduate of Tennessee State University, a deacon, husband, father of two, and a grandfather of three to the most amazing children on the planet. Welcome, Brother Holt.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And then we also have Brother Dr. Kevin Billups. So Dr. Billups is a highly experienced urologist and men's health specialist with over 30 years of dedicated practice in the field. His focus is on men's health and sexual medicine, and he is an authority in managing both erectile dysfunction and testosterone deficiency as symptoms of chronic medical conditions such as diabetes, obesity, hypertension, and heart disease. He uses his unique approach that combines traditional medication with lifestyle changes, such as improved nutrition, exercise, sleep, and mindset. This clinical strategy allows Dr. Billups to address the root cause of medical problems rather than just simply treating the symptoms. With personal experience of positive benefits, Dr. Billups advocates for this approach to restore health and vitality in himself and his patients with chronic diseases. He's a strong believer that the only solution to sustain better health is for men to empower themselves to act and make lifestyle changes. Dr. Billups is a graduate of Harvard University and the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, completed his urology residency at the Johns Hopkins Brady Urological Institute, and then pursued a fellowship in urology, sexual medicine, and vascular physiology at the University of Virginia. Dr. Billups is currently a professor of internal medicine and urology and director of the Men's Health Program at Meharry Medical College in Nashville, Tennessee. And throughout his career, he has helped countless men restore their health and lead happier, healthy, fulfilling lives. So once again, thank you both for joining us. So starting this thing off, I think most people have an understanding of what nutrition is. Obviously, what you put in your body, your food, even if they don't necessarily make all the right choices. But that being said, what is metabolic health? I think most people think of, when they think of metabolism, is maybe in their minds is just how fast they're burning off calories. But Dr. Billups, I'll start with you. What is metabolic health, and how does it play a role in all disease and cancer development?
Sure. I'd be glad to answer that. So, and you're right. That's a term a lot of people don't know. So, I'm going to bring up. I have a couple of slides, and just want to show you all what. It's easier just to show this, and I'll do that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit. Actually, I'm going to go right to the metabolic health side because you did with the whole introduction here. Let me just talk about what's going on here. And I'll tell you first, when you look at these these four components of metabolic health. It sounds like it's a fancy term. It really is not. It's a very simple term to understand, but I'm going to tell you, it's the key to men's health and actually all of your overall health. So 4 things to metabolic health: what's your blood sugar, what's your waist size, what's your blood pressure, and what's your cholesterol. Those are 4 things that you need to know. And so I put the numbers there that are normal. So if you have your blood sugar, that's a fasting blood sugar, should be less than 100. The waist size is the one that trips a lot of people up, because everybody wants to talk about their pant size. And it's not the pant size, it's the waist size. And everybody knows why, right? If you want to know your waist size, get a tape measure after this talk, and at the level of your belly button, measure what it is. Should be less than 40 inches. Actually should be less than 37 and a half, but less than 40, is where we start. You see the blood pressure and the cholesterol numbers. Why is that important? The reason that these 4 things are important is because 88% of men have at least one of these that are abnormal. And what I'll tell you is, when I see you in the office, by the time you come in just to see me, most of the men have 3 to 4 of these that are abnormal. Over 60%, 3 to 4 of these that are abnormal. And I'll tell you a little bit about as I talk about this, and Tony will tell his part, but everything that I'm talking to you about metabolic health, I know firsthand, because 10 years ago, this was me. 10 years ago, I was at a point in my career where I had completely stressed myself out. I was about 50 pounds overweight, tired, fatigued all the time. Typical man. I thought I could handle everything. Didn't, just was really in denial about this. Blood pressure was up. Finally got some blood tests. Blood sugar was up. So when I look back at my own personal history 10 years ago, I had all 4. I was 4 for 4. So I was the typical man with poor metabolic health. And fortunately, a friend of mine pulled me aside and said, "You really need to come and listen to me about what I'm talking about with lifestyle." And I went to a seminar and really just came out and decided I needed to do this. So as we talk to you, we'll go more into that. And when I did it, make a long story short, everything reversed. I mean, I over the first 3-4 months, I lost about 40 pounds, and everything kind of went back to normal, felt better than I ever have. So this is important. Why is it important? Well, here's why it's really important. Metabolic health is important because it leads to these major conditions that I know all of you all know about, right? Let's look at hypertension first, especially among African-American men, the African-American community. So 50% of US adults have high blood pressure or heart disease. So we'll focus on high blood pressure. That means that 50% of us listening to this call right now have hypertension. Look at diabetes or pre-diabetes. 50% of us on this call have diabetes or pre-diabetes. If you look at being overweight or obese, 75% of us are in one of those categories, and cholesterol is about 40%, and that's being generous. Depends on how I want to look at cholesterol. And then you see the cancer diagnosis. Now, here's the good news that we're going to bring to you today. Everything that's mentioned here is related to lifestyle and nutrition, every single thing. So we really have it in our power, and Tony's going to talk a lot more about that, to do something about this. And inflammation is kind of the root cause. And the last thing I'll say before I go back is, you don't feel your metabolic health. You don't feel that you have hypertension. This is what you feel. And this is what the men come into me and see, these symptoms. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm a sexual health expert, like Bro Wilson said. I'm going to tell you, erectile dysfunction is so linked to heart disease and stroke and diabetes is unbelievable. It can be an early warning sign up to 3 to 6 years before you have it. But a lot of men come in with urinary symptoms, weight gain, back pain, gout, all these different things, sleep apnea, depression. These are the things that men know. And where I'll stop now and leave you with is that none of this stuff happens in isolation, right? All of this everything is connected. So that's an intro to metabolic health. I just wanted to set the stage. I think it's easier for people to know what it is than if I just talked about it without pictures.
Yeah, and as you just touched on, it's the slow, silent killer. You don't just wake up one morning and have these conditions happen. I mean, it's all about lifestyle, just not doing what you're supposed to do over time. And pivoting to Brother Holt, you yourself, a prostate cancer survivor, had a range of these conditions that he just described. What actually prompted you to make that change? Because unfortunately, typical Americans, we don't like dealing with a problem until it's too late. But, what prompted you to actually make those changes and be on the journey to heal?
I'll tell you what, if you'll let me share a little bit of my story, about a minute and a half, and then I'll definitely answer that question. And so let me just share with you, Dr. Billups will pull up a slide, just share with you my journey, and then we can talk about that question for sure. So this actually is me right here. So by age 25, I was on my first medication. Age 30, I was on my second. First one was high blood pressure, then cholesterol. Then I was borderline diabetic. Then they thought I had congestive heart failure. Then I had prostate cancer. Those are compounding, like Dr. Billups said. So his journey and my journey were very similar. It wasn't that I woke up with all of these things. It is I kept on doing the same things and never making any changes. And so I find myself to be 60 pounds overweight. And then, and I'm living this life of building business. I'm an entrepreneur, so I've been building businesses since 1995. And that was where I was spending all of my time, not focused on my health. And so all of a sudden, I can barely get out of bed, dealing with everything that Dr. Billups just talked about. And every last one of those symptoms were my symptoms as well. So I was 4 for 4 on the chronic metabolic health conditions of cholesterol, blood pressure, A1C out of control, glucose levels out of control, waistline over 40, the whole 9 yards. The picture on the left is me on my way to about 250, 60 pounds. The one in the middle is actually me on my way back down after waking up and realizing that I could do something different. So that's the same jacket. And the picture on the right is actually me about to run my first full marathon. So I had started running marathons before that, but this was the first time I'm running 26.2 miles. And so if you think about it, I went from the physicians saying I had congestive heart failure to actually running marathons. And so why did I make the shift? What woke me up to make the shift was the word cancer. And so why do we have to wait that long though, before we make a change? And so cancer scared me. What didn't scare me was all the other things leading up to that. Meaning, when you tell me I have high blood pressure, I've been trained and conditioned to hear they have a pill for it. When you tell me I have cholesterol, I've been trained to hear they have a pill for it. When you tell me my A1C is elevated and I'm borderline diabetic, I'm trained to hear there's a pill for it. And so we keep on going down through these processes, and that's what happened with me. I feel like I could keep doing what I was doing, not making any changes, because I've been told they had a pill, even though they give you an extra pill because the first one wasn't really bringing your blood pressure down. And so those lifestyle changes are the things that we have to make in order for these things to actually work for us.
And you talked about mindset, and it's whether you're talking about an addiction or bad habits, it's almost like, you're not going to get better until you decide that you don't want to get better. And unfortunately, a lot of people wait until, like you just said, like they hear the big C or something that's irreversible, and all of a sudden they want to make some changes. You just touched on something that I think about in terms of people wanting a quick fix, because even as a veterinarian, I see this all the time. When people bring their pets in that are overweight or these chronic conditions, like I tell them, like, hey, you could just feed them better, take them on more walks and things. They don't want to hear. They're like, Doc, can you just give me a pill or something that I can use to fix this? And we see that even with people, as distrustful as we are of, especially the Black community, of pharmaceutical companies and doctors saying, oh, they don't want to cure nothing. But then we give them simple things that are essentially free, take better care of yourself, or at least relatively inexpensive. It's almost like people don't want to hear that. So much so, and Dr. Billups, my question is for you. because your approach is combining traditional medicine with lifestyle changes. Can you speak briefly on kind of the new craze of people wanting that quick fix, whether it's these metabolic weight loss supplements like Ozempic and things like that, and how, it's mostly just treating the symptoms, and at the end of the day, you got to make some other changes?
Yeah, well, you just hit what the point I make to people is medicines treat those symptoms, right? So a medicine is going to treat the symptoms. Medicines do not get to the underlying cause. So what I really tell patients is, and you mentioned, with Ozempic with weight loss, in my realm, a lot of times, for instance, it's testosterone or things like that. What I tell them is, look, I can give you this. It's going to mask the symptom, but it's not getting at the underlying cause. So you could be somebody with diabetes, and I can treat you, get you an erection, get things moving. But if we don't get to the underlying cause, I'm not really doing you any favors, because you're still sick, and things will slowly get worse. Whereas if you look at the lifestyle things that we're going to get into here, you're getting at the root cause. So you're really almost, getting to where you're healing yourself from the inside out. It's an approach that makes a lot more sense to me. But then the other key word that you said that Tony and I talk a lot about is mindset, because in the end, this is what it really comes down to, right? I mean, do you want the quick fix, or do you want something that's a more, long-term solution, but you're actually getting at what's making you sick?
So a lot of people might be surprised, like, hey, he's a urologist, what does he know about, nutrition and metabolic health? But what were you seeing in your practice that led you to kind of go down this road and look at that?
Yeah, so you're right. I get that a lot, in terms of urology. So here's how I got into this whole field of men's health. I'll give you the really brief view. So I was, as I mentioned, I was specializing in all the erectile dysfunction, and I did a fellowship that really taught me all about vascular medicine and blood vessels. And here's what I noticed that started this whole thing for me. When I was in my practice, it was mostly erectile dysfunction at the time. I started noticing guys coming into me who were in their mid 40s, 50s, mid 50s, maybe 60s, after they had a heart attack, after they had the angioplasty where, heart problems, and they were coming into me about erectile dysfunction. I just started to ask them, when did your erection problems first start? Was it after your heart problems or before? And 2/3 of these younger, healthy kind of appearing men were saying they had ED 3 to 6 years before they had their heart problems. And so that really intrigued me, because I kept hearing it over and over again. It just so happened that my fellowship training was all in vascular medicine. So honestly, even though I was a urologist, I started hanging out with cardiology. I was like, look, there is more going on here than what we think. And to make a long story short, you look at this now, it's the ultimate early warning sign. So that's got me into metabolic health. And then from there, I started getting into men's health. Why as men are we so slow to come into the doctor? Why do we ignore these chronic health problems? And then that led to the 4 pillars. So when I say the 4 pillars are the key to your men's health, that's exactly what I mean. And it's the key to your sexual health too, if you want to take it to that point. So I'll stop there. I don't know if did I answer what you wanted to hear? If not, I
Yeah, definitely. And bringing Brother Holt into this, both you and Dr. Billups actually co-founded this 90 Days Men's Health Challenge. And can you talk about, I guess, the key aspects of this program and how it plays into all that? You still on mute?
Sure. Let me share with you the 4 core components of the challenge. So we have built the Men's Health Challenge around four key components: mindset, medical knowledge, nutritional knowledge, movement, and sleep. What we recognize under mindset is desire is the starting point of all achievement. And then having an understanding of that you are going to have to see yourself at the finish line. That's what the commitment means. You have to see yourself at the finish line in order to do this. And so we focus on emotional health, on your mental health, on helping you understand how to identify triggers and overcome those triggers so that this becomes more of a lifestyle, not a diet. So we don't focus on weight loss because we recognize if we focus on those 4 chronic metabolic health conditions, that you don't have to focus on weight. The weight actually takes care of itself because you're focused on the right things, which brings us to medical knowledge, understanding those 4 pillars that Dr. Billups talked about, understanding the link to those chronic health conditions and the life you're living, and what changes you need to make, not just nutritionally, but also the changes you need to make in other aspects of your life for this to actually take place. The nutrition is an evidence-based approach as well. So we don't tell people, Dr. Billups and I spend no time talking about what we think. We talk about what the research shows. And we're able to share with people hard evidence from qualified aspects or organizations that we've peer reviewed and have been peer reviewed by others to actually understand what these necessary nutritional components are in order for the body to actually heal itself. And that healing strategy for us is from the inside out. You will feel better. You will understand that your blood pressure has changed, your cholesterol has changed before you actually see some of those external benefits of weight loss, skin clearing, all kinds of other things. You won't have the back pain, the gout, the leg pain. All of those are internal healings that take place before you see some of those external results. And then movement and sleep is the same thing. We recognize, the research shows that movement and sleep are critical components to actually the body healing. The body, if you think about restoration, the root word for restoration is rest. So therefore, you've got to get some of that in order for your body to actually heal. And we wrap that in this thing we call practicing self-care, something men have a hard time doing. We do not spend enough time caring for ourselves. And what do we mean by that? You know, if you think about it, when you get on an airplane, the flight attendant says, in case of a drop in cabin pressure, 4 masks will drop from the compartment above. Put your mask on first and then help the person next to you. That's not a selfish statement. What they want to do is make sure that if you're strong and healthy, you have the ability to help someone else. If everybody is able to put their mask on first, then all of us are okay from that standpoint. And so our focus is around doing that.
And I know we're talking a little bit about most about men's health, but a lot of these are universal, right? Regardless of your gender, like man or woman. These things affect us, so I don't want the ladies to feel left out in all of this as well. Speaking a little bit on plant-based nutrition, I think some people almost kind of think of it as a joke or like it's a hippie thing to do, like when, talk about vegans, like, and all the jokes and, all the burgers, substitutes and things out there. But I mean, there's some real evidence out there that having a more plant-based nutrition is better for you. Can you talk a little bit about that? Either one of you on, what we're seeing in the actual scientific literature. Because that being said, the internet is a dangerous place. Anybody can just put up a video and tell you what you want to hear, or, you got modern day snake oil salesmen saying, if you drink my magic tea, you'll lose all this weight and you'll be good to go. It cures everything. But I'm talking about actual scientifically peer-reviewed literature that says this is what this does. Can either of you speak on that?
We can both speak on that. So, Doc, I'll start and then pass it over to you. From our standpoint, we really, like I said earlier, don't share things that have not been reviewed well and have great proof behind them. For men, we have quite a few things that actually are beneficial for our body nutritionally and things that are not so beneficial. And so the research for us is of critical importance when we talk about something like prostate health, or when men are dealing with prostate cancer and prostate issues. The research has shown that even the things that we love to do, like eat chicken and all of those kinds of things, that the fact that we're cooking that food at high temperatures, that we're consuming too much of it, the research shows that our prostates are and other parts of our body are being damaged by that. And so our incidence of prostate cancer is through the roof because we spend more time eating those and less time eating the foods that actually have been proven to heal the body. As an example, cruciferous vegetables have been proven to heal the body. And what are cruciferous vegetables? Kale, broccoli, arugula, cabbage, foods we probably were already eating, Brussels sprouts, and didn't have a clue that these foods actually are foods that actually heal the body when eaten in the proper quantities and when paired with other foods. Why is onion beneficial? Why is tomato beneficial to the body for what the properties are? Lycopene in tomatoes, beta carotene in carrots. Those colors mean something. What are antioxidants? And when you have the knowledge of those things, which is why we spend so much time during the 90-day Men's Health Challenge, helping men understand the power of nutrition to heal the body. And the testimonials are overwhelming. When Dr. Billups and I first started this, and we would get testimonials from guys, we were like, wow, this is really exciting. Now we go, yeah, this is standard for the person who actually understands that eating these foods and eating them in right quantities and doing the things and reducing some of the things that are causing us problems, that the food would heal. You can actually use these natural strategies versus, like you said, some of the other things that you hear people selling that have no real efficacy behind them, never been studied or any of those things. And so people are taking those in, and the damage to their bodies, sometimes can be irreversible.
I'll just follow that quickly I'll just give one example that I hear all the time, especially since we're talking about prostate health and prostate cancer here. Because when I talk to groups, one of the big questions I get asked by, especially African-American men, is how do I prevent prostate cancer? What can I do to protect myself from getting prostate cancer? And, you talk about evidence-based. What the literature is showing now is what we call, as Tony was saying, it's a plant-rich diet. I don't like the term vegan. This is a lifestyle. It's a plant-rich lifestyle, clearly showing that if you eat a more plant-rich diet, you are lowering what's called your PSA level, a prostate-specific antigen, which impacts your prostate. So that decreases, prostate problems, whether it's cancer or even enlargement. If you were to get prostate cancer, eating a healthier diet, actually, what has been shown is that, especially in men over 65, that you have less of a risk of getting a more aggressive cancer. So it is very clear now that there's a direct link between what we eat, and being obese, non-obese, but also what we eat and how it impacts. And again, I'll just stick with prostate cancer. The beauty of it is the same nutritional strategy is not just about prostate health. It impacts your heart health. You talk about diabetes prevention, weight, everything. It's the same thing that leads you to the roads. I just gave you an example on prostate, since we're talking some about prostate cancer.
And it's my personal testimony. I had prostate cancer, low-grade prostate cancer. After starting to eat the foods that I ate, not only did the prostate cancer go away in 90 days, but also my heart health improved to the point where I was walking, then jogging, then running. I lost 35 pounds in that first 90 days. I went back to my primary care physician, and she simply said to me, she says, Tony, this blood pressure medication we have you taking right now is working really well. I said, Doc, I meant to call you and tell you I've been out for 2 months. She said, wow, but then we got your numbers back on your cholesterol. And I said, yeah, Doc, I meant to tell you I've been out of that for about 2 months. She said, well, whatever it is you're doing, just keep doing it. So we know firsthand, you heard Dr. Billups tell his story and mine as well. So I did not have to have my prostate removed. And the food actually was what actually made those changes. But knowing and understanding what the proper nutritional compounds are that you should be eating, and then the foods that you need to take out of your diet and lifestyle, they're very critical. And when we talk about nutrition, we talk about nutrition from a holistic standpoint. We're not just talking about, people think that the mind and the body and the soul are 3 different things. They may be 3 different things. They're connected to one person, though. So when you're eating, your emotional health is better. The research shows that. your mental health is better. It improves. Everything improves by what you put in your body.
And, Brother Holt, Dr. Billups, I hear what you're saying, but, it's expensive eating healthy. That's an excuse I hear, and another barrier is, especially in, poor communities or African-American communities, we live in these food deserts where, it might be difficult to find like a farmer's market or a good grocery store that has a lot of these things. People who might just say it's too expensive to eat healthy, or man, I just can't, there's just nowhere near me. It's not accessible. What would you say to that, or some ways of overcoming those barriers or that thought process?
So several different ways. Those are real issues. What we found is that it actually is not as expensive as people think to eat healthy. It is the choice that we make to actually do it. And so oftentimes we find, we actually read a study. We'll have to get that study and post it. The amount of times that people eat out in the course of a day or a week actually far exceeds what it would cost for you to eat at home. And so if you're wanting to figure out how to eat healthy and continue to eat out all the time, that may be very expensive. Access to those foods are a problem for some people, but we've also discovered that there's certain ways that you now can have some of those foods delivered to you. And so, but again, preparing it at home is a heck of a lot cheaper than you might think. And then the long-term benefits of eating healthy, I was looking at a number that said that someone taking the Ozempic to lose weight was $138 a month just to get whatever it is on that process. $138 a month, where I bought a week's worth of kale for just recently. 2 stalks of kale will last me a week, and it was $1.39 per stalk. And so I'm gonna eat it for $3, if you will, versus $138 and get the same first line benefit.
And then we got some questions in the chat, if you don't mind taking some. Something that got brought up, and I believe probably in Dr. Billups' story, or maybe both your stories, is the impact of stress and how that plays in the metabolic health. I know particularly Americans and some other Western societies, like, we're workaholics, like just, pulling 60 hours more work weeks, or, if you're like the breadwinner at your home, working multiple jobs, sometimes that can play into like feeling like you don't have time to do these things. Can you, either of you, talk about the impact of stress on metabolic health and how it is important to practice self-care?
Sure, I'll start with that one. I'm sure Tony can jump in too. So you're right. Stress is huge. I mean, and we have a whole section in our program that's devoted to emotional health, and we kind of put 4 things under emotional health: stress, anxiety, depression, and also some cognitive changes. So that the stress can have a immediate impact on your metabolic health. The metabolic health is more medical, but what does stress do? Stress causes you to release hormones that can raise your blood pressure. It can cause you it'll affect your cholesterol. You'll put on weight. All those metabolic parameters are affected by stress. And I think Tony kind of mentioned it earlier. It is clear, again, evidence-based, that the way you eat can impact your stress, depression levels, even your some cognitive function. So all of this is linked. So I'm glad you brought that up, because you have to factor in the emotional health. And I'll tell you, and Tony will tell you too, we pick a lot of emotional health up in our program. And Tony, you might want to comment on some of the things that we see. But yeah.
Sure. And Dr. Billups started this with the root cause when he started talking about high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, and those numbers he gave. He said the root cause of this is inflammation. So stress is an inflamer. And so when we're in that stress mode and the cortisol, we're always in fight or flight. We've changed the dynamics of what the body is used to. Fight or flight and that cortisol increase, we are now living that way. And we continuously stay in that mode. And those are the things we actually have to work on. And when you're eating these right nutritional profiles, that actually helps to reduce those cortisol stress levels and put us back where we need to be. I don't think any of us on this call today would say that we don't have some level of stress and that we're not the breadwinners, we're not working hard and all of those things. We live in that lifestyle, but we cannot exist continuously in that stress level that is actually unhealthy for us. We have to figure out how to get rest and all those other things that you heard us talking about. We actually did a study with a group of men that went through our program that on average, I believe their numbers were about 4.5 hours of sleep a day. Then when we shared with them the power of rest and that restoration, their numbers went to 7.5. But we also saw all of their stress levels and things of that nature, specifically talking about it. All of those things improved dramatically.
And touching on inflammation a little bit, I mean, I know people tend to gravitate towards when they think about being overweight, just, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes. But I mean, really, proper metabolic health and nutrition, that protects you from a whole range of things, whether you're talking about like viral diseases, COVID, flu, not just prostate cancer, but other cancers. So can you all talk about how being metabolically right and eating right can protect you from many things? Because I know people want to say, oh, I don't have time or it's too expensive, but how can you afford not to? There's so many other aspects to this.
Yeah, I'll start there. You hit on, and before I forget, because I meant to with the cost. So one of the things we talk about is people worry about with the monetary cost, obviously, but there's something else we talk about. I call it the cost of inaction, right? And you really just hit it. What is the price we pay if we don't address these things? And the price we pay is this whole metabolic health thing. So inflammation, what's interesting? A lot of times we coexist in this society with the way we've been eating with just this chronic inflammation. So arthritis, gout, knee pain, all of these things. And a lot of times people go on the program and it's like almost a matter of fact, they'll say like, you know what? I don't have that knee pain. I'm out walking way more. I've had gout for years and it's gone. But inflammation underlies everything, as you mentioned. I mean, every single factor there can be linked to inflammation. It causes you to put on weight, sleep apnea, every single thing. So that is the core. If that's the one target that we're actually getting at with good metabolic health, that's exactly what it is. And the last thing I'll comment on quickly is you mentioned COVID. Now, what COVID really did, if you ask me, COVID really just put a spotlight on all 4 of those metabolic health parameters, right? Blood pressure, blood sugar, your weight, and the cholesterol. Because what COVID showed was, especially in the African-American community, if you have metabolic risk like that, then you're at increased risk of getting COVID and you're at increased risk of having severe COVID and dying from COVID. And you can take all the other measures you can do, but as you were mentioning, how about getting a stronger immune system? How about protecting ourselves from COVID-19, from COVID-20, from COVID-25, and how about just from chronic disease in general? So yeah, that one statement, you unpacked a lot of stuff on there. So I'll be quiet. I gave a quick answer, but I wanted to cover a little everything.
Appreciate it. And can I ask you, I know we talked about the importance of eating right, but also, and this might relate to stress, like not eating is a problem too, right? Like some people are so busy that they just skipping meals or just eating, snacking here and there, but even not eating is a problem, right?
It's a huge problem. Our bodies are designed to run on fuel. And if you're not feeding it, it has no fuel, and then during the 90-day men's health program, we cover quite a bit of that because we found that men were coming to us talking about, well, I don't eat that much. I just eat 1 meal a day. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe that's not true. When we actually do a research, we find they snack a lot on all the wrong things. Power bars, protein bars. They think that that's better than eating. Drinking all of these potions and everything else. But the truth of the matter is the body needs the full complement: vitamin A, B, C, vitamin D, vitamin K. You need everything. You need zinc. You need all of these things in your body. And the place that you get them is going to be in what you take in. And when you're taking it in from a synthetic standpoint, meaning that when you see the words fortified with, that means they added it to it in more of a synthetic form. So if you think you're eating things that are actually beneficial for you, you'll find that you're not. You've got to get the right amount of food. The key is for us to eat high nutrient and low caloric density foods versus what we've been doing. We're eating high caloric foods with low nutritional value. And so we find in America that we're eating at about 3,500 calories a day on average, the amount of food we're eating with limited amount of nutrients. And we should be eating somewhere around 2,000 calories with a high amount of nutrients. And if you're doing that properly, you won't count calories. You'll just be eating the foods that you should eat, and your body will benefit from it.
And talk about, you touched on a little bit on, snacking and like, what is a healthy snack. Can you talk a bit about juicing, or either you are advocates for juicing in terms of like, putting stuff in a blender and just taking a quick shake real quick, or, is it really better to get the actual whole plant?
Personally, we're advocates for smoothies more than we're advocates for juicing. Juicing has some benefits to it. If you think about it, most plants are about 90% or more water. So an orange, kale, spinach, mostly water. If you pull only the juice out and you don't have any of the other 10%, what might you be leaving? And so making a smoothie and putting the right complements of food in your blender and blending those up will give you way more of a nutrient-rich approach than maybe just pulling out the water from a vegetable or a fruit, if you will.
And then I guess pivoting a little bit back on mindset, and I guess us being almost conditioned to a sense to have these poor lifestyle choices or to gravitate towards medication. As I'm a father myself, my daughter's a year and a half. How much, as parents or, or people that have influence on young folks and children, like, can either you speak to like having a good foundation or starting point? Because, unfortunately, you look at some households or kids and it's almost like you think, man, they don't stand a chance. You see how their parents are living and they're not imparting good values on their children, and then what that leads to in adulthood.
I can start and Tony can jump in. What's interesting is what we found in the program is in our program targets men, and the men would start learning how to really eat better, prepare food. Some guys had never even been in a kitchen before. And then what happened was a lot of times the wives of significant others would join in because women kind of push us on to take better care of ourselves. They're much better on around prevention than we are. But they would join in, help, and they would get involved. And a lot of times we would have both them going through. But then what we started noticing was, to get to what you were saying, was the kids started noticing their parents eating better. And then they were like, well, maybe I should try this. And so then especially some of the older kids with the teenagers, they started doing that. They started feeling better. So that was one of the best things. The whole thing was just kind of self-example, like you said, education, leading by example, seeing what their parents were doing. And that's not a powerful thing. So a matter of fact, now we're really looking at, we think this applies, as you mentioned, not only to women, because like the metabolic health applies to women too, but this applies to really, children and adolescents too. I don't know, Tony, you might want to add to that.
To piggyback on what Dr. Billups said, it's not our fault, really, when we think about it. We do a training on it's not your fault. Doesn't mean you stay there, but it's not your fault in getting started. And the research showed us that there are more than 10,000 images a child will see in a period of a year on how to eat. And the number one thing that those things that are they're being shared in front of them are sweets, salty, sweet foods, highly processed foods. 95% of the images around food are that. And so when you think about, you're seeing 10,000 images. It's on television, every advertisement. It's in your social media feed. Kids spend a lot of time in social media, so they continue to see the image that tells them to eat a certain way. And so, and less images around eating kale and broccoli. So when you put broccoli or Brussels sprouts in front of a kid, do they want to eat that? No, they want to eat that highly processed food that they've been told. We found research that shows McDonald's spends more than $1 billion a year on advertising to get you to come and eat that. And it's quick and it's convenient. And that's what people are used to doing. And so we have to help people understand that those things that are causing you the greatest harm, you've got to figure out how to take them out. And then you got to figure out how to put back the things that are most beneficial. And you have to make food fun. And so what we figured out is creating ways to make food fun. We hear all the time, you know, this has helped my marriage because now my wife and I are in the kitchen. This has helped the relationship with my children because the kids are helping us prep the food, and we're now holding conversations in the kitchen while we're prepping the food. We have pictures of people sending us pictures of their 2 and 3-year-olds in the kitchen, standing on a step stool, helping to cut food with a knife that doesn't hurt them, but they have their children involved early. And that's what we realize. You've got to help combat some of the images they're seeing with creating images yourself.
Yeah, I can say I was that kid, and my parents tried. I will say they tried to get me to eat vegetables, but I just would not eat vegetables to save my life. Now, as an adult, I realized, okay, I got to do better. And then with my daughter, I just try to make sure, like, you know, hey, like, let me make sure that, you know, she's doing better. At least I did when I was a kid. But almost playing devil's advocate, you know, you have some people that might say, like, you know, hey, you know, I eat right, you know, I hit the gym, I'm walking, but I just cannot seem to lose the weight. Like, you know, what do you say to those people who feel like, you know, man, they're trying, but it just doesn't seem to be happening for them?
Yeah. So
You want me to start, Doc?
yeah, why don't you start? And I can pick up on what you said.
Okay. You know, we typically tell them, show us what you're eating first. If you write down everything that you're eating and you share it with us, we can show you where the changes need to be made. And many times what the marketing has showed us is we need to be eating this. And so people have a misnomer about protein. We'll use that as an example. And so, and where you get it and why it's beneficial. And if you're going to build muscle, you got to eat a lot of protein. Well, the truth of the matter, the research shows that that's not the case. It's the complex carbohydrates that feed the brain, that create glycogen, that give you energy, that allows you to work out. And that if you have the right nitric oxide based foods, nitrate based foods in your nutritional profile, that your body actually will allow you to actually work out and use less oxygen, and that you understand what you're supposed to be doing. So weight loss, we've heard all kinds of people tell us, even the thinnest of folks tell us that they can't lose weight, but this is not true.
I don't really have much to add to that. It's just looking at under the hood and seeing, we see all kind of things, just not eating right. Some people going into complete starvation mode. You know, they think, well, I'm just not eating. And you know, so that's the first thing is to, like Tony said, tell us what you're eating. And then usually we kind of go from there, because we know if you eat the right stuff, you know, and then a lot of them don't even know what their metabolic health is, right? Because as we were saying at the beginning, we don't harp on weight loss itself. It's how's your weight in relation to your metabolic health. A lot of men, when they come in, they have no idea what those metabolic health parameters are. So,
and then touching on a little bit more, I mean, is there at all a genetic component to it? Because I know, you know, for myself, I personally haven't had a problem, you know, with weight, and I can almost eat whatever I want. But you have other people that they just, you know, they look at food and they gain weight. So like, and can you talk about, there's not necessarily like, I guess with this program or with these lifestyle changes, it's not necessarily one size fits all. Like to a certain extent, some people may have to do things differently or more than somebody else.
And there's tons of research out there on genetics and weight loss to prove that actually there are very few of the genetic markers that actually are the reason why people cannot lose weight. It's just very few. And so, and it amounts to almost 0% of the population that's in that group. And so you have to understand what the role nutrition plays in weight loss. And so, and you have to actually understand what you're doing. And so Dr. Billups and I spend a lot of time on tracking, because we understand that if you're tracking what you're doing and you understand what you should be doing, and then you know where if you're improving your immune system, if your energy levels are at a right level, all of those kinds of things, that tells you a lot about what changes you need to make in order for weight loss to actually happen. The other thing is, and I'll say this and turn it over to Dr. Billups, we don't focus on weight. Focus on improving your metabolic chronic health conditions, and the weight actually takes care of itself.
That's become my bottom line. I mean, I guess the most powerful endorsement I can give is that, I'm 30 some years into practice, and the last 10 years between experiencing this myself and what I've done in my clinic, it's changed the way I approach medicine. I will lead. I'll ask you a couple questions. Are you just curious about your health, or are you serious about your health? And most of the time, the men are going to say they're serious because we're men. We're not going to back down in the doctor's office. And then the next question I'll ask is a little tougher: is, are you ready to face the things that are making you sick? And again, most times I'll say yes, and then I'll say, well, great. I got good news. One, I can address your medical problems, and I can also transform your life. But the first thing I need you to do is level up around lifestyle. So let's talk about what's going on with what you're eating, movement, and sleep. So that's the approach I take now, and it's had amazing results.
Yeah, thank you both. And I've been trying to weave in a lot of these chat questions into our conversation. I see one person asked, any advice on or views on vitamin supplements? I've heard mixed things, like take them, or you actually just kind of pee them out. You don't really get much from them. So, and either of you talk about, these popping a vitamin once a day.
You want to start that one, Tony? Or you want me to take it?
Go ahead, Doc. I'll follow you on this one.
You want me to start? I can start that. So our feeling honestly is if you eat the right food, you get a lot of the vitamins. Now, there's certain vitamins that I think are important. So I always get the multivitamin question from people, and my answer as a physician always is, well, I don't see anything wrong with it. I'm not going to tell you not to do it. Again, if you change your eating habits, I think certain things are key. I think vitamin D is important. I think people are very low in vitamin D. Vitamin D impacts metabolic health and immunity. Vitamin B12, especially if you're going to follow a more plant-based diet, it's important to supplement with vitamin B12. I like zinc because it's got some prostate health properties, but we really focus on trying to get you to eat in a nutritious fashion, because we think that you get a lot of these other vitamins. Now, I'm not going to tell somebody don't take a multivitamin, but like you said, it does change your urine pretty colors. But those are the three I mentioned are the ones I think that are especially D and B12 are the ones I think are really important.
Yeah, the word supplement simply means to top off. So it shouldn't be the way you live your life. It should be to top off, like Dr. Billups said, the things you're not getting. And so if you find yourself being nutritionally low in an area, even though you're eating the right foods, then certain vitamins you can use to top off. There's a lot of research that says if you use synthetic vitamins like vitamin C, the damage to the body is actually greater than you think. Also with synthetic calcium. And so you've got to really understand what these things might be doing to you negatively before you actually think that you need to supplement those things. So having that medical knowledge and nutritional knowledge, and then knowing how to apply it to your life is of critical importance.
Thank you. We'll take one more question and we'll get ready to wrap up. There was a question about hypothyroidism and thyroid removal. I'll say even we see this in animals, hypothyroid pets, they're more prone to gaining weight and having all types of metabolic changes. So can you all speak to that at all? Obviously nutrition can help, but is that more of a situation where you're going to look at a combination of nutrition and probably medical treatment?
So, for that, just what you said, I would look at more of a combination of medical and nutrition, right? Because there you've had your thyroid removed, so your body really doesn't have the capacity, as either a diminished or no capacity to make it. So certainly, again, eating healthier is always kind of my baseline, and then I have no problem using other medications when they're indicated. I think this is an indication for that. But even with that medication, I would still encourage, having good metabolic health isn't going to hurt. It is not going to hurt. So.
Totally agree. I mean, just the better your metabolic profile is, then you can look at the capacity or the amount of medication you might need. And so those things actually could change.
So as we wrap up, thank you both for your time and sharing a lot of great information. What is something that, and this question is for both of you as we wrap up, just to tie things off, what's something people can take away from this? And to add to that, what advice may you have for that person that, obviously, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you can't go, one day from just eating steak and bacon all day to just automatically being a vegan. So just as far as getting started with the process and what somebody can take away from all of this, just to start moving down that path.
So, that's a great question. One thing, there are certain things that really you should think about quitting cold turkey, period. And then there are other things you should think about making changes. So blood pressure research shows what it's connected to. Our sodium intake is way higher than it should be. And where we get our sodium from, people don't really understand. Yes, one, we're shaking salt on our food, but the second thing is we don't understand how much sodium is actually injected in the chicken that you're eating before you even cook it, because that increases the weight of the chicken. You don't really understand that those highly processed foods are giving you all of the things that are actually causing your metabolic conditions to be out of whack. So you can change that by simply moving away from those things and then looking at just making ratio changes. Let's say that you are eating 3 times the meat and 1 vegetable, and the only vegetable you're eating is a potato. So why don't we think about even going to a 1-to-1 ratio, that if you're going to eat meat, that you have a green vegetable to go along with it. You can make those types of changes. Those are quick, easy things that you can do that will have some benefit to you right away.
Yeah, and I'll just add just a little bit. I'm not add, just follow up, but I think if you look at the standard American diet, what many people eat, the amount of processed foods, I mean, you're right. It's hard. When I did cold turkey, I honestly, I was a skeptic, and I was just I wanted to prove this wrong as fast as possible. I get back to my old ways, and then but even I tell men, we try and meet you where you are. We give you the education. We try and engage you and equip you and then really empower you to act. And you're right, acting might be, you're taking steps that you can take. But here's what we find. Because what we normally eat with the standard diet is so bad, even if you just make those partial changes, like Tony was saying, you're going to start feeling better. You're going to start feeling better within a couple of weeks. Within 4 weeks, you're going to start noticing changes to your metabolic health. Your taste buds are going to start changing. And it becomes, if you have that mindset that I want to take care of myself, I'm ready, you're going to keep going on it. So I have no problem with people with people deciding what they can do, like Tony said, and then you make it. Because what we find is once you get going and you feel better, you start seeing changes, you're probably going to keep going. and do more and more. And your body is not going to let you slide back. And we can tell you some funny stories about that, but we won't because of time. So.
And thank you, Brother Holt. Thank you, Dr. Billups, for your time. Once again, whether we're talking about men, women, or your whole family, like everything that you talked about is so important and impacts all the other facets of your life. Real quick, one last thing, where can people go to find more information about the things that you all were talking about?
Sure. Our website that you can find us on is actually Project Health 500. And that's the number 500, projecthealth500.com. And you'll find some information about us. And also, Dr. Billups and I just finished a master class. So there's a master class on out there called Your Health Matters, Men, Your Health Matters, about us confronting the truth and actually taking some action steps. And then also, if you're interested in joining our next challenge, it actually starts on the 27th, on Monday. And so for those who might be interested, feel free to join us.
All right, so Brother Holt, Dr. Billups, thank you for your time. And everyone that was out there watching, thank you for joining us. See you later.